everybody, welcome back to my series called the Teach Back Method, where I teach you guys something I'm learning about in grad school to help me learn it better. So on our last segment of the ascending track, we're going to be talking about the ventral spinocerebellar tract. Let's get into it. Before I start explaining this mess that's going on behind me, I'm just going to reorient you guys to our template that we have going on here. So up here we have our cerebral cortex, our brain, which is very general because the tracts do not go up there, so we don't need to talk about it. Goes down to our midbrain, pons, cerebellar hemispheres, our medulla, spinal cord, and then keep in mind the levels of the spinal cord going from cervical, thoracic to the lumbrosacral sections. Before I dive into specifics about our newest tract, the ventral spinocerebellar tract, I want to explain generally and overall what's going on here. So I know the whiteboard looks very busy right now, and that's because it is very busy right now. We actually have 3 cerebellar hemispheres up on the whiteboard. So we have our dorsal spinocerebellar tract is the tract in red. We have our cuniocerebellar tract, which is the tract in blue. If you haven't seen those previous videos, go check them out on my page where I explain them and break them down individually. And then I have added our ventral spinocerebellar tract, which is the orange and burgundy colors. I kept them up all on the board because I think it's really important to see where they all enter at the spinal cord in different levels. Some of them cross, some of them don't cross, and they all generally synapse in our cerebellum. Additionally, a big thing that coordinates all of these is actually the type of information that they transmit. So all 3 tracts actually transmit information about our unconscious proprioceptive information. The difference between the tracts is about where that information is coming from. So, for example, our dorsal spinocerebellar tract is carrying that information from the trunk and lower extremities. Our cuniocerebellar tract is carrying that type of information from the upper extremities. Our newest tract is carrying that generally. Okay, so it's carrying the non-conscious proprioceptive information about general limb movement, so upper extremity and lower extremity. So it's kind of combining the two together. So that's why I do have all 3 up here so we can really see what's going on, grand picture. Okay, let's talk about the ventral spinocerebellar tract. Now this tract appears to be a doozy because it actually crosses twice. So it's very hard to digest, but don't worry, we're going to break it down. So the ventral spinocerebellar tract is a 2-order neuron chain. The first chain is here, and the second chain is all of this. So breaking it down piece by piece, we're going to talk about that first chain. So this is something we're very used to seeing in our previous tracts. Our receptor is actually out here in the Golgi tendon organs, and then we have our cell body in the dorsal root ganglion, and then it synapses in the intermediate gray. Now, because I kept our dorsal spinocerebellar tract, think back. The synapse was in Clark's nucleus in the intermediate gray. Now the synapse for our newest tract is not in Clark's nucleus, but it is still in intermediate gray, so it kind of lines up. Now our second chain starts there. So the cell body is in that intermediate gray, and it immediately crosses. So that is our first cross. It ascends all the way up. Now, I do have 2 colors here because remember the purpose of this tract. It's general limb movement, upper body and lower body. So that means there have to be 2 different sections, right? Because we have some information coming from higher up, some information coming from lower. So that's the only difference with the colors here. So we see the tract generally ascending up and entering the contralateral cerebellum. Now, remember, it started here, so this side over here is the ipsilateral side, over here is the contralateral side. Now, because most of my lines are over here, it might be deceiving, but I do want to point out only some of these synapses on the contralateral side. And in reality, the majority of the fibers will cross back over again. They'll cross a second time and synapse on the ipsilateral side. So we do see the majority of these fibers from this tract actually going back to the ipsilateral side, and only some of them synapsing on the contralateral side. Since all 3 tracts are up here, there is one more difference I do want to point out between the 3 tracts. So the ventral spinocerebellar tract will enter the cerebellum via the superior cerebellar peduncles. In comparison, our dorsal spinocerebellar tract and the cuniocerebellar tract will enter via the inferior cerebellar peduncles. So that's another important thing to note, right? There's one more thing I want to talk about, and that's lesions of this tract. Now remember our general rules. If there is a lesion before a crossing, it's generally ipsilateral. If there is a lesion after a crossing, it's typically contralateral. So keeping in mind that, if we're sticking to our first order neuron, if there's a lesion here, the defects are going to be on the ipsilateral side of the body. Now, if there's a lesion after this crossing, anywhere up here, the defects would be on the contralateral side of the body. Thank you.